Hi, I'm Danny Pellegrino from the Everything Iconic podcast. And who doesn't love a classic burger from McDonald's? That's right. McDonald's classic burgers are hotter, juicier, and tastier than ever. The patties are cooked to juicy perfection. I love the cheese perfectly melted on top. I love the Big Mac that has a special sauce in every bite. I love the pillowy, soft, golden bun. So in the words of the Hamburglar, which I believe means grab McDonald's best burgers ever before Hamburglar does at a McDonald's near you.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. You know, it's hard to believe that inflation is still a thing, but boy, it sure is. And that's exactly why Mint Mobile still gives you premium wireless for just $15 a month. Well, it's also because we have that offer printed on, like, 1 million T-shirts, but it's mostly the inflation thing. So give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months required. New subscribers only. Renew for 12 months to lock in savings. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See mintmobile.com.
Welcome, guys, to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host, Tony Evans, taking you into the wacky world of heavy metal and all other forms of heavy rock music. That was my attempt at being a DJ. Didn't work, did it really? Anyway, this week's episode is a little bit of an indulgence on my part because it brings into sharp relief one of my favourite things in the world, and that's horror movies. And horror movies and a specific type of horror movie, and specifically the soundtracks attached to them. Because this is, after all, a music podcast, so we're going to connect two things together today. Don't go switching off, all you heavy metal nuts that want to be hearing me talk about bands. There are bands involved in this chat, but it's more to do with my little bit of past and something that I find comforting. Right, so it begin at the beginning, shall we? It's 1978, and a shop on Denmark Street opens called Forbidden Planet. Now, before Forbidden Planet, there had been a shop in the Haymarket, I think was, central London, that brother and I used to go to, called Dark They Were and Golden Eyed. And it was that's a Ray Bradbury quote, and it was like a science fiction comic book store, and I used to go in there with my brother to buy the Hammer movie poster comics. They were like basically like inside behind the scenes things of Hammer horror movies, but you folded out to be a big, knocked my mic with my cup, folded out to be a big picture of either a poster or something like that to do with Hammer horror. Excuse me. And that we used to also get the Hammer horror trading cards. I used to get the chewing gum, which I always wanted, and Andy wanted the cards. In the end, I wanted the cards as well, to be honest. And he used to get Famous Monsters of Movie Land there, and Fangoria when it sort of just started out. And anyway, that sort of closed, and so brother and I used to go on a weekend to Denmark Street, to this little tiny dark store that was basically film posters, comics, all sort of film memorabilia. I remember they had a really rare, you might not know this, but one of my favourite movies of all time is Ridley Scott's Legend, and they had a really rare poster. It was like a prototype poster. It was hand painted, and it wasn't expensive. It was like 15 quid at the time, which was probably a lot of money back then, but you think about it now, it's virtually, it's worth thousands. But my brother and I used to go, and he would always go down to the back of the store, and in the corner, I vividly remember it, where they had the record section, soundtrack section, and my brother Andrew was a big collector of film soundtracks. Excuse me. I had a bit of a migraine over the last couple of days, and it's just thrown me about a bit. Yeah, big collection of soundtracks. My brother, mainly horror soundtracks, although he did like, anything really, any sort of soundtrack thing, but he did love horror movies and Godzilla movies, and just really weird ones. Let's have some tea, sorry. And one of the ones he picked up, which I really want now, and I was hunting for it, he had a numbered green label version of this particular soundtrack. It was the soundtrack to City of the Living Dead, the Lucio Fulci movie. And now that thing, on Discogs, a copy of that, if someone was willing to sell it, is $5,000 US. It's crazy, isn't it? Absolutely crazy. Because I'm going to lead into why it would be that valuable in a minute. But so I used to, go back with Andy, and I'll tell you another place we used to go. We used to go to the soundtrack department upstairs on the second floor of Tower Records in Piccadilly Circus, which doesn't exist anymore. Very sad to say, because people don't buy media the way they used to. We used to go there, and often he'd pick up, if it wasn't buying a comedy record like a Mike Harding record or a Jasper Carrot record, which he used to love as well, he'd be buying soundtracks and some really interesting stuff. I remember he had, a lot of the ones we're going to talk about today are the ones that I sort of inherited from Andrew. I didn't get them from him, but I bought some subsequently afterwards. But from listening to the music, because he loved prog, and he loved classical music and just music in general. He found soundtracks because he loved film like me, horror films particularly. I got my love of horror films from my brother and from my father. More so from my brother as I grew older, but from the beginning of my life it was with my father, who loved horror movies. He's not very well at the moment. Anyway, sidetracking. So I want to sort of jump in and talk about a form of horror movie because I can't cover everything because it would be ridiculous, but I'm going to cover the sort of genre of horror movies that I particularly grew up enjoying. And enjoying is the wrong word. Some of it is, I think the word is enduring, enduring it. Some of it's very hard to watch. A lot of it's on retrospect absolutely terrible, but that's the reason that I love it. So I grew up watching the horror movies with Dad. Originally with things like Hammer Horror, all the classic famous monsters of Movie Land. Pardon me. Excuse me. Sorry. More tea. All that sort of stuff. And I remember staying up late. My father and I were watching House on Haunted Hill, House on Haunted, which he, when I think about it, it's not very scary at all. Vincent Price, it's actually pretty lame, but Dad, it really got to Dad, and I don't know why, but it did, because my father's very first date with my mother, he took her to see Vincent Price House of Wax in 3D Technicolor, and what a wise move it was, he said to me later, because every time that something made her jump, Mum was in his arms. Brilliant move, really. Think about it. Sweet move. It's very endearing. Mum hated the bloody things, hated horror movies with a passion, and it probably comes from that. Anyway, so of being of a generation I'm 50 next year, so the generation I really got into the, I'm a video cassette generation. A late night TV and video cassette generation. Late night TV was your traditional stuff, your House of Hammer, as I said, or your Marcus movies. But the late night, the stuff from the video store was something that my brother really digged, and it's the video nasty realm. Okay, I know people are gonna go, oh my god, I can't watch that trash, or almost exploitative, or it's violent, or it's misogynistic. There's cruelty to animals, which I'm not going to talk about, and I don't really condone that aspect. Yes, it had this. It does have that nastiness to it, but a lot of it was overblown, and and overreacted to by Mary Whitehouse and her bunch of cronies in the UK when they were sort of against basically freedom of speech and ability to watch what you want to watch. Now, I get that they ban stuff, and I get that there is a moral compass, but sometimes that compass spins in the wrong direction, or it gets distorted completely. Anyway, that's a different soapbox conversation. What I was talking about is these movies. So I really got into the Italian, and I still do. I watch a YouTube channel called Horror Geek, and he's brilliant. I watch him every Thursday. He just makes me laugh. It digs the same stuff I dig, and we review stuff. There's also a really good YouTube channel called Dark Corners, which I would highly recommend. His reviews are intelligent and really thoroughly thought out. Anyway, so the Italians, God bless the Italians. Firstly, they make the most outrageous cinema, and they make some of the most outrageous soundtracks. We've all had a dabble and enjoyed in some spaghetti westerns, have we not? Yes, we have. So when you say, "What you telling exploitation cinema?" Yes, you do, because you watch the all this Cliff, all the I was about to say Cliff Richard. Then what the hell did that come from? Clint Eastwood. Imagine Cliff Richards in a few dollars more. Be hilarious, wouldn't it? So anyway, Italian exploitation cinema. So not all of it is exploitation cinema, of course. What the Italians do is they see what's doing, well, they used to, they'd see what's happening in the world of big hit cinema in America and in the UK, and then they would copy it. They would use American names on their directors and change their names and the actors' names to sound, because it wanted to sell it to the Americans, because God bless the Americans, and God bless you all Americans, but there's some of you you in that country won't watch a movie if it's directed by someone called Sergio Stilevetti, which is, it is what it is. Happens all over the world. Bit silly, but it is what it is. So the main proponents of these cinema main director was a couple. There's Lucio Fulci. He's the godfather of Italian gore. Again, and then you've got Umberto Lenzi. And you've got Sergio Stilevetti. He's a special effects guy, but he did make movies, directed some movies. Dario Argento, but he's in a completely different world. And Bruno Mattei, probably one of the worst directors of all time. He will probably admit that. And a few others in and around there. Ruggero Deodato, who made one of the most mean-spirited and nasty piece of film you're ever going to clap your eyes on. I would not recommend you watching it. Those are weak-hearted and weak-stomached and have, not morals, that's the wrong word, are easily offended. Okay? But they're soundtracks. So, we'll park the really sleazy exploitative stuff first, and move over onto one of my favourite horror directors. I mean, I struggle to call him a horror director purely because he mainly made Italian movies in the vein of sort of thrillers. All right, there's a special name for them. Okay, for these thrillers. Okay, now they are named after the little yellow books that they originally were from, or so there's a little series of books, mainly all yellow font and yellow binding, and that's giallo. Sorry, Italian listeners, if I've butchered your beautiful language, but giallo, which is yellow. He made, I think, the seminal giallo movie, which is Bird with a Crystal Plumage. Not violent, but not graphic. Really very in the same vein as Hitchcock movies. In fact, you could probably call Hitchcock in some respects in his later movies like Frenzy, giallo. But giallo movies, so he sort of run their course. They're pretty frenzy. They're pretty nutty. They're pretty off the wall. very Italian, very Euro, full of twists and plots and turns and beautiful women and fast cars and hairy chest men, medallions and craziness. Dario Argento sort of did a few of those, and then he sort of hit on making possibly the most beautiful horror movie ever made, which is Suspiria. He made that in 1977, and so those that work in the film industry, I did for quite some time, would understand. I was also in special effects for a long time. They would understand that there's a thing called gels. Okay, so you put gels on the front of lights and you flood areas with bright Technicolor. And Dario Argento's cinematography and his eye for colour and movement is second to none. He's probably the most gifted cinematographer slash director in the history of film. The way that the camera moves through the opening shots in Suspiria and through a lot of the very clever moving shots. I'm not going to make technical things here, but there's lots of clever shots taken and done in Deep Red with Profondo Rosso, which is the second movie. But along with these stark, graphic, violent images, and a lot of them are, he does a lot of, I mean, he once quoted, he'd rather see a beautiful woman die slowly than an ugly woman die fast. Now, don't get up on your soapboxes and attack me on it, or attack him. Everyone has their own opinions, okay? Is it misogynistic? Probably, but at the same time, it's just an opinion. So he made, in 77, he made Suspiria. I had the really privilege of taking my oldest daughter to see Suspiria here in Canberra. Sadly, it was meant to be his original 35mm print, but someone lost it in transit. Can you imagine turning up to Dario and saying, "Sorry, Dario, we've lost your personal print of Suspiria"? I wouldn't want to be that person. I think they found it subsequently, but it had to be played through a DVD or digital one, so it wasn't quite the sensation I wanted. I wanted the grainy sensation of it, that sort of moment. 1 second, gonna take some tea. Yeah, so that sort of grainy rawness. I won't go through the story of Suspiria, because the Three Mothers trilogy that he would produced is beyond crazy. It's beyond me being able to tell you. There are some amazing, violent and beautifully violent death scenes in it. And for an Italian movie, because the Italians had struggled in the mid-80s to get the quality foam latex to make good prosthesis. That's why when you watch things like Fulci's Zombie or House by the Edge of the Park or House by the Cemetery, or The Beyond or some of that, or even anything like City of the Living Dead, any of those ones, they look really cheap in the special effects department, like the makeup effects department, because they just couldn't get it. They weren't skilled enough. They clearly were. I just couldn't get the materials. Anyway, so that's a side note. That's just my thing, because I love special effects. So yeah, so full of these death scenes, and to portray and to punctuate the power of this movie, he originally got on board some musicians to record it. He really didn't like the outcome, so he discovered this little band that first started out in 1972 called Cherry, so Oliver. Then they became Cherry 5, and then they became Goblin. Now Goblin are my favourite Italian prog soundtrack heavy metal makers, right? They make some really interesting, angular, stark, heavy, funky, motivating, terrifying music that cinema has ever had, I think. The opening soundtrack to to Suspiria, the amazing atonal 4/5 rhythm time signature keys is just I'm sorry, I've just got my notes here. I'm just reading it. Is what I've made. Let me just highlight. Yeah, just gives them this eerie. How do I say it? It punctuates. That's what I'm trying to say. It punctuates the image so well that if you try to take it out, you would have absolutely. It would be terrible. It just wouldn't. It wouldn't move. It would sit. The image would carry it, of course, because as I said, Dario Argento's a genius. Flawed, but all geniuses are, aren't they? But it's just that. It's just that angularness, that coldness of it. And then, of course, almost this sort of. They using some early sampling with this, and the same we did with this next movie, or Profondo Rosso or Deep Red. I highly please hunt out the original Italian prints that have not been dubbed, because firstly you get here the actors emote, secondly they're not edited or they haven't been cut. A lot of prints of both Profondo Rosso and Suspiria have been heavily cut. To suit most markets. I mean, I had to get my copy originally illegally imported into England by some friends of mine from Denmark, or Holland, sorry. In their suitcases, they just took the tapes out and wrapped them in. They posted the tapes to themselves in the mail, and they put the covers in their bags, in their suitcases. It's crazy, isn't it? Because they could have got prison sentences for owning them. Not now, of course, but then. So it was very, I felt it very, I loved the underground feel of it. I think there's another thing I loved about it. I loved the, brown paper bag, hush, hush, don't tell anyone, nudge, nudge, wink, wink thing, that we come into the back of the store when no one's looking, and he'd show us this incredible collection of movies like Blood-Sucking Freaks and Contamination and uncut copies of Evil Dead, which was really hard to get hold of. The Palace print original VHS is uncut, but then they released it again and butchered it. Anyway, so it was Goblin. So Goblin are this progressive rock band, and they do heavy progressive, so it's not sort of all whimsy, right? And they predominantly now work only with soundtracks. I think they don't do much more anyway. They do stuff with Claudio Simonetti, who's a keyboard player. I think they worked on quite a few films there. And they're touring with him, apparently. According to this notes, they tour with him. Most of the band, 4/5 of the original band, are still going. They've had a lot of lineup changes. But these are the soundtracks. I'm going to read out a list of soundtracks I would like you. You can get them on Spotify and iTunes. You can watch the movies. You can buy the soundtrack separately. If you've got a piece of pen and paper, right, make a note here. I'm going to pause for a second. If you get a piece of paper and a pen. Was that long enough? Maybe some more? Maybe some ASMR for some tea drinkers. So firstly we have Suspiria. And then we have Deep Red or Profondo Rosso. And then we have Martin. You know what? I've absolutely bummed it up. It went Deep Red first, then Suspiria. Ah, Lord. See, this is when you look at your notes and you think, I've written that down wrong, and I put a staple in the top corner and I've missed the dates. I apologise sincerely. So Deep Red first, then Suspiria. But Deep Red was 75, Suspiria was 76. Okay, so you can sort of see where maybe I may have got that a bit mixed up. It's all still part of the same trilogy. Deep Red has some famous English actors in it. Same as Suspiria has an American actress in it. They did use American and English actors to sell it overseas. Deep Red's... there's a death scene in Deep Red involving a piano, which, if you're not careful, will make you wince and want to rush to the dentist immediately. It's quite devastatingly awful. And there's also a great hatchet murder in it as well. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So Suspiria is still even though, yes, Deep Red, sorry, came first, Suspiria is still his seminal work at this point anyway. And so soundtracks. Deep Red, Suspiria, 1979's George A. Romero's Martin, a classic movie. Martin is a movie about a boy who thinks he's a vampire and drugs women and slits their wrists and drinks their blood until they die. And he moves in with his very religious priest grandfather, who eventually, in the end, well, not ruin the movie for you. It's all shot in black and white, and color flashback, black and white flashbacks and color. It's disturbing. It never made a lot of money on the cinema. It is, I think, Romero's one of Romero's greatest movies. Obviously, we're all known for his Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead series. But that's his. I think he's really one of those movies. Outside of that, the Crazies that he did as well, brilliant. Anyway, they did that. They also did the Italian soundtrack to Dawn of the Dead, Romero's opus magnus, as they say, right? Now, I personally, because Dario Argento came on board to edit the movie to sell it to the Italian markets and called it Zombie 2, because it was like a riff on Zombie Flesh Eaters that come out the year before, and it around that time, sorry, and it also added more gore to sell because it wasn't as bloody, even though it had the genius Tom Savini doing the special effects work, and it is still pretty graphic. The Italian print is a bit longer, it adds more to it. It's a bit more plodding. It's not as fast paced as Romero's print. But the difference is it has a Goblin soundtrack. And the Goblin soundtrack makes the fucking movie. It really does. Watch the American print, then watch the one with the Goblin soundtrack, and you tell me which one's the better one. Because I'm telling you now, it's definitely the Goblin one. And then we move into Patrick. Patrick is a very disturbing movie. I just noticed we've gone over 26 minutes and we'll probably need a rest. So I'm going to stop here, make my tea a bit more warmer, have some adverts, and then we'll come back the other side and talk about those other ones, about Patrick and beyond. Thanks. Bye.
Hi, I'm Danny Pellegrino from the Everything Iconic podcast. And who doesn't love a classic burger from McDonald's? That's right. McDonald's classic burgers are hotter, juicier, and tastier than ever. The patties are cooked to juicy perfection. I love the cheese perfectly melted on top. I love the Big Mac that has a special sauce in every bite. I love the pillowy, soft, golden bun. So in the words of the Hamburglar, which I believe means grab McDonald's best burgers ever before Hamburglar does at a McDonald's near you.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months required. New subscribers only. Renew for 12 months to lock in savings. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See mintmobile.com.
In a fast-paced world, every day brings new challenges and new opportunities. At Strayer University, we know a thing or two about getting and staying ahead of change. For over 130 years, we've been providing students like you with innovative tools and customized support, so you can find your way forward and always keep striving. Visit strayer.edu to learn more. Strayer University is certified to operate in Virginia by Chev and has many campuses, including at 2121 15th Street North in Arlington, Virginia.
Welcome back, guys. Sorry that was a bit longer than first. Oh, no, I can go longer. I'll just wrap it on. It's a subject I'm really passionate about. So, anyway, Patrick. I first saw Patrick on a double bill late night when I was 13 with my brother and my dad. It's an Australian movie. They're Australian movies. Patrick's about a boy that kills his mother and her lover in the bath with electric fire, goes into a coma, is in hospital his whole life, and then suddenly weird psychic stuff, psychokinesis stuff starts happening. I saw them on a double bill with Harlequin, which is an Australian movie, sort of another good, quite scary, but not so much a horror movie about the Powell, the actor. See, I need to 1 second. See, I was riffing on a voice, and my brain is gone. Is Anthony Powell? 1 moment. Robert Powell. Sorry, guys. I think he's in Patrick as well. Got to remember. He's definitely in Harlequin. He plays this. There's an Australian politician whose son's dying of leukemia, and he is a magician. Comes to a birthday party and he heals him. It's sort of a riff on the Prime Minister that went missing at sea here in Australia many years ago. He went for a swim and never came back. Sort of a play on that. Anyway, there's some really, really weird stuff goes on in the Patrick movie. They've remade it recently, and it's not a shadow of the original. And the soundtrack is, again, it's Goblin at its best. It's just angular, hard, heavy, fast-paced. I also saw that again years later on another double bill with a brilliant American horror movie that's forgotten now. It's called Manitou. Venom made a song about it. It's got a brilliant ending that I won't give away, but the ending is unbelievable, blow your mind. Anyway, so moving on. So then they did Contamination with Luigi Cozzi, the director. Contamination's a Alien ripoff. Again, brilliant. Exploding body parts. Won't say anymore. Okay. Then he goes and he meets back up with Argento with his Three Mothers trilogy. So you have Deep Red, Suspiria, Tenebrae, but Deep Red's not part of that. Sorry. The Three Mothers trilogy is Suspiria, Tenebrae, and Phenomena. Okay. Tenebrae. I'm not even going to attempt to try and explain it. There's a very good bit in it with Inferno as well. Sorry, there's a very good bit in it with a corpses underwater. I'll leave it at that. All right. So very tenuous sort of trilogy of these movies that Dario Argento made. So Suspiria, Inferno, and Tenebrae. Sort of Phenomena, but not really. Phenomena. I think it's a really silly name. I've never liked it. There is another name for it. So Dario Argento, he did Tenebrae. They did Hell of the Living Dead with Bruno Mattei. Phenomena. We did do that again with them. So that's about a girl that controls animals and insects. Brilliant. They shot with a fly. Now today's it will be CGI, but then they got someone to microsurgery on a fly, put a little wire, and they controlled the fly while it was alive around the car. It's pretty bloody clever. And then the last film that they sort of did that's recognisable would be Michael Sauve's The Church. Michael Sauve was in Demons and Demons 2. He's an Italian star or an actor. He's also a special effects artist, and he's also a director. Extra talented bastards. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's Goblin. I don't want to keep going on about Goblin, but they're the store, okay? And like I said before, park the crazy Italian cinema stuff, okay? Flip over to the crazy Italian cinema stuff, and let me get my notes. Here we go. Right, so you've got Fulci was making movies with I think the second best film soundtrack director from Italy is Fabio Frizzi. Fabio Frizzi. I always wanted to picture him with a big afro. He sort of took what Goblin was doing and then weirded it up 11, using Mellotrons, Mini Moogs. What was he using? He was using Leslie cabinets, tape loop stuff. They're doing early digital sampling. Really heavy, very ponderous, very slow. Like the zombies in Fulci's movies, they're slow and they're ponderous. In Zombie, for instance, there's a bit where a woman gets her eye pushed out with a splinter and slowly pulled towards a splinter. And the soundtrack on that, the music in it is so tense, so dramatic, and so heavy that again, would it be the same without it? Probably not. And then you go into this. He made a movie called The Beyond, and I think that's his magnus opus. Now, Fulci made a lot of movies. I'm not going to go through them all. He made a lot of movies that you'll remember. I mean, if those of a generation like me will remember Zombie Flesh Eaters, how it was so terrifying, and could we get a copy of it, and can we find it? And he made The Beyond, which is brilliant. Again, about a house over a portal to hell. Some absolutely buttfuck crazy deaths in it. Some unbelievably brilliant special effects. Some really awful ones with these mechanical tarantulas eating this guy's face. A slow pull towards a nail, and eye pushed through the back of the head, and eye popping out. It's just, and then right at the end, one of the best and most awful matte paintings I've ever seen. Matte paintings when you paint back in front of the camera, and then you put on glass, and you put the actors in front of it. It looks like they're there. It's done very, very well for the Yellow Brick Road scenes in Wizard of Oz. It's done very, very well in The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, and the original Thing, but not here. But it is still wonderful anyway. All right, still wonderful. As I said, don't go into these movies if you don't have a stomach for this stuff, because it can be quite. Like, there's a movie called Cannibal Ferox, which or Make Them Die Slowly, which is really nasty. I mean, uber nasty. It didn't begin it actually. Sorry, no, it didn't. I'm going to get that wrong. The original cannibal movie genre, which was very Italian, was a movie called Man from Deep River, which was also a rip-off of a Man Called Horse. It has got some very nasty piercing scenes and hooks and stuff, so if you want to stay away from that. There is also a monkey gets the top of his head cut off, and you see it live. It's not a monk, it's not a fake monkey, it's a real monkey, and they eat his brains. I mean, look, please, if anyone's eating this over dinner or breakfast, I apologise. It is not the sort of, I don't watch that, just so you don't turn off in droves. I actually have copies of those movies, and I would not watch them. I would, and I couldn't not have them, because I was as I always have been, as a collector and a purist. I needed to have them. And Cannibal Ferox was another one. You can get copies of it without the animal cruelty. Diatto did get in a lot of trouble for it through the Italian courts. He got fined for doing what he did, and I'm really bloody happy he did. They also try to prove that his murders were real, and they clearly weren't. Absolutely not. I mean, they had the actors in court. How could I have killed them if they're here, sir? Anyway, because they saw that whole snuff thing that was going on in the early 80s. So Fabio Frizzi, he's the guy to listen out for in Italian shock cinema. Okay, I think one of the best soundtracks possibly of Fulci's career is a New York Ripper. It's another mean-spirited movie with my favourite actor of all time, Klaus Kinski, the German crazy nut who was just, I don't know what it is about him, but it just draws me to him. And I'll talk about him in a minute later on, but yeah. Okay, so that's what I would do. Look for Fabio Frizzi soundtracks, Goblin soundtracks, any of the Italian, exploitation movies. Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS, Ilsa Siberian Tigress. They're all awful, but they've got great special effects by Blasco. Blasco was amazing because he didn't use lots of foam latex. He used like putty and stuff. He did go on to use foam latex in Cronenberg's Shivers, or They Come From Within, depending which country you live in. That's another body horror movie that gives me the heebie-jeebies. Anyway, moving on. So where I was coming from is Italian cinema. I think there's the craziest soundtracks. I think if you want to understand how a soundtrack changes the way the movies work, because we do take it for granted, is listen to that. Listen to Dario Argento's Goblin music. Listen to Fabio Frizzi's work. Listen to Mikhail Sovi's work. I'll put a list of the names in the show notes so you can have a look and listen, because you might be interested. But now I'm going to just quickly dive, while we're getting deep into the podcast, into my personal collection of favourite horror soundtracks. And these are heavy, guys. Some of this stuff is really just brilliant. Now, I actually own these particular pieces. I'm just going to do a quick, brief outline of the soundtracks, okay? I've already talked about Zombie 2. I've already talked about Dawn of the Dead, and I've got the Italian soundtrack to that. That's the Goblin soundtrack. I've also got the American soundtrack, but the Italian soundtrack's brilliant. I've got Near Dark. Now, I know Matt loves Near Dark. Matt, who inspired me this conversation about talking film soundtracks. I'm on a chat the other day. Matt Coombs, the Iron Maiden nutter. He mentioned, and he loves Near Dark. It's a zombie on the brain. It's a vampire movie. I'm not going to go into the story of it. I think you should just go out and watch that. The soundtrack itself, though, was done by Christopher Hong. It's claustrophobic. It's dark. It's suppressive. It's angular. It's perfectly aligned to the visuals of the movie. And if you see the movie, once you've seen Near Dark, you don't forget Near Dark. And that might also move, because Christopher Hong, I won't tell you now, but he's done lots of work, and I've got lots of the lists. The reason I'm not mentioning them is because these are the ones I own, okay? I had to flick through these the other day to double check. Now next is The Bogeyman by Tim Krug, 1980. It is basically in front of the 13th slasher movie clone with some of Tom Savini's. Tom Savini is one of my idols, along with Rob Bottin, Rick Baker, the three gods of horror special effects and physical effects. And he did some very, very good work with shears in this. So again, I'm not going to give it away. I would like you to watch it, but the music is stark. They used a lot of organ, a lot of synth, analog, and it's pulsing. And they used reverb tape in this one. So he got like a tape and he stretched the tape across the room and played it for different speeds back through the tape head as he's recording the sounds. It's really clever stuff on a low budget. You can get these soundtracks, by the way. Not all of them are rare and unattainable. You can also, a lot of them are actually on. Off the mic. A lot of them are actually on, like a reissue through Waxworks Records. Okay, and then we come to Maniac, another Tom Savini tour de force of nastiness. This really is mean-spirited. This is as bad as New York Ripper with Klaus Kinski. This is. They remade it recently. It's not the same. This is a movie not for entertainment. I'm sorry. It is entertaining in the same way that, say, Taxi Driver is. Say that The Deer Hunter is. Yeah, it's just. I think even Tom said he went too far. This guy attacks women. He scalps them. There's a brilliant head explosion at the end of it. Gunshots through the car window. It was Tom Savini's head. Like modelled his head. Joe Spinelli, who played the main actor in it for many years after, was haunted by it. He's no longer with us, and he was haunted by it. And I think that some of this stuff just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it, right? The music is quite crestfallen. It's quite stupefying. It's synth. There's a particular piece of music in the soundtrack called Hooker's Heartbeat, which until you hear it, it will blow your mind when you hear it. It's so terrifying and so chilling that I can't actually listen to it separately to the movie. And then we look at, as I said, I've already said The Beyond before. That's an Lucio Fulci about and this is Mellotron again. It's Frizzy, 1981, Fabio Frizzi. He wanted to make it like the sound of hell opening, and he really did. There's orchestral pieces in there. There's weird distorted vocals. It is heavy. Truly, if you put this on a heavy metal soundtrack, people will think you're a genius. And we'll move out. Let's move away from the Italian stuff, and we're going to move into Videodrome. This is the music by Howard Shear, 1983. It's seductive. It's deeply disturbing. It's sinister and arousing, because the movie is sinister and arousing. If you've ever seen Videodrome, I can't describe it. I'm not going to describe it. All I can say to you is long live the new flesh, and you'll understand where I'm coming from. Please see the unedited version. Don't see the edited version. It really is an abomination to do that to this movie, because yes, it came out at the same time, the Video Nasties, but it's not a Video Nasty. The shots that I needed in it, where the guy, he puts his hand into his stomach and pulls out a gun that's attached to his hand, it's necessary. There's some really quite shocking songs. I mean, Blondie's in it, Debbie Harry's in it, James Woods is in it. I mean, it is quite a high profile movie. It's sort of around maybe just after Scanners, when Cronenberg was really hitting his straps, making really interesting body horror movies, and this is the pinnacle for it, really. Anyway, it is by the sounds of Howard Shear, 1983, and it's his third movie he did for David Cronenberg. He did the first three movies, Shivers. I think he did The Brood. Anyway, then we move on to a really high-profile horror soundtrack. Okay, this one is The Omen. Now I've had it for a long time. It's the biggest on the list I have. It got an Academy Award for soundtrack. And the piece of music was called Ave Satana, which is really odd because the Academy is quite Christian, and it was at a time very high Christian moral values. You've got you're coming into Reaganomics and so on, and Reagan era. It is easy accessible, and it would not be the movie could not be the way it is without this piece of soundtrack. It's clever, it's interesting, and it's by Jerry Goldsmith. I mean, Jerry Goldsmith is a musical genius, is he not? So when you see Jerry Goldsmith's name on a soundtrack, you generally know you're going to do all right. Okay, moving on. Sorry, Russell. Sorry, I wrote in the back of bits of paper, you see, and I'm going to find where I bloody wrote the thing. All right, yes. Then we're going to move in. Now this, I'm sorry guys, I will wrap this up as soon as I can. It's quite a longer one, this one, because there's a lot to get over. The next one is one of beauty. It's a beautiful soundtrack. It's scary. The movie scared me. It is the remake of Nosferatu by my favourite film director of them all, Werner Herzog, in collaboration with Klaus Kinski. He made it shot for shot the same as the 1921 classic movie by F.W. Murnau. Popol Vuh did the soundtrack. I only found out this morning that Popol Vuh is actually is Mayan. It's a Mayan word. I think it means it's a god. It's a god anyway. It's a Mayan god. He wrote this music. It is stunningly beautiful. It's not heavy, guys. It has moments of heaviness in it, but it's so stark, so terrifyingly beautiful in the way that when Klaus portrays the sad and sorrowful creature that falls in love with Lucy and travels to Bremen. They had to make it Bremen because the original movie made in 1921 was was too close to the original Dracula story and was within 50 years of copyright of the book, and so Bram Stoker's wife ordered all the prints to be destroyed. Luckily, 8 copies survived, luckily for us, because it is the greatest piece of expressionist German cinema, and they're remaking it this year apparently. I'm a bit dreading it, but anyway, moving on. Beautiful soundtrack. It's not heavy, but it's eerie, it's hollow, it's damp, it's dark. It's just beautiful. It's picture that goes with the images really well. Rounding out my soundtracks, coming to the end. The last 2 are John Carpenter. Now I left John Carpenter to the last because John Carpenter, it goes without saying, he writes his own soundtracks. He's a very, very talented director, and the 2 soundtracks I've picked that I've got in my collection are The Thing, because it's the greatest horror soundtrack, a horror special effects movie of all time. It is the pinnacle of special creature effects. Followed very quickly, I think, by The Void, the Canadian movie that came out a few years ago. The music soundtrack's by Ennio Morricone. Now, we all know Ennio Morricone because he did spaghetti westerns, and Carpenter's a big fan of spaghetti western movies. So he thought he'd use him, brought him in, and what a good choice. What a brilliant choice. The space in the notes is so wide. It's so angular. It's so cold and stark. It feels like ice. It feels like isolation. It feels like there is no way out. It feels like the creature is just there next to you. The moments of transformations, the music used in it, the moments of silence that punctuates as the creature transforms, is Rob Bottin is a genius at special effects, a genius, and he was like 21 when he did it. It just blows my mind. And the movie, yes, can be ponderous. Yes, it lost out, didn't get the Academy Award for special effects that year, and it didn't do very well at the cinema because of its pacing. I think that is bar humbug, and it was a time of when it was released. People wanted action. I think now it would do very well on release. The prequel is not bad. It's all CGI. Is what it is, I suppose. Moving from there to the very last one, Halloween. How could I not mention Halloween? It is in 5/4 time. The piano at the beginning. It is stark. It is terrifying. It is the perfect portrayal of a mind gone somewhere where it shouldn't be. It is a perfect portrayal of a killing machine. The music that he produced for this, Carpenter played all the instruments, or most of the instruments on this, and mixed it. It's inspirational. He got his inspiration from Goblin. Going full circle, backwards, okay. And also from Bernard Herrmann's Psycho theme. Now, I didn't mention Psycho because I want those are honourable mentions that we don't need to talk about. I wanted to talk about all the obscure stuff and stop having my account in my in my collection. It was inspired also by his father, who was a music professor. He played the bongos and taught Carpenter to play the bongos, and bongos have a strange time signature. You know, do 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 do. It was that sort of minimalist, off-kilter way of making music. It, along with probably Friday the 13th's Jason motif, where it goes, Jason, that sound that was sort of just repeated to create that sort of loneliness in the woods feel. It is so... Horror movie soundtracks are heavy. They are so heavy metal, they're so heavy rock, they're so progressive that, yes, there are movies out there that just have heavy metal music in their soundtrack. Lost Boys, Trick or Treat. I could pick a load. That's not what I was talking about. I think that's easy. Anyone, let's be honest, can get a piece of pre-written music that I think suits that. And it was very 90s, late 80s to early 90s, just to fill film soundtracks with pop music and rock music and heavy metal music. Just be honest, if I ever have to hear Bon Jovi in my life ever again, will be a day that I step in front of a bus. I'm sorry. I grew up towards the end of the 80s there. He was on every bloody soundtrack, wasn't he? You know, if it had Emilio Estevez on it, it had fucking Bon Jovi on it. Sorry, you Bon Jovi lovers out there, but yeah, no. I'd rather stick my cock between two flowery baps and call Fido. That's a Blackadder quote there, guys, if you don't know what that's from. Blackadder goes forth. Anyway, that's my take on horror film soundtracks. There's a lot to cover in an hour. I might have to come back and do it more specifically, but do go out there and do try and just hunt them out and have a listen. I did put on my Facebook page Profondo Rosso, which we're now realising, stupid me, was his first movie in the series of where he became more graphic, Dario Argento that is, and Suspiria. I think Suspiria is the harder one to listen to. Profondo Rosso or Deep Red is the easier one to sort of get your head around. Goblin do have their own albums. In fact, I've got quite a few Goblin albums that are not soundtracks. If you want to buy hard copies of them, Waxworks Records do sell them. They go for silly money now because they get released in small numbers and then you can't get them. And I'm really pissed because a lot of that stuff is not released outside of the US. So any US listeners who really want to send me any Goblin soundtracks, please do private message me. I'm happy to pay you the postage if you can buy them for me and post them to me. There was also a Nosferatu spinner which went on top of the record. It's like a weight. I really wanted it and I stayed up till like 2 in the morning to the release date in America. And I went to buy it and it said not released outside the States. Like, what the fuck? You should have put that in the blurb. I wouldn't have stayed up too late to get it. I really wanted it as well. Because Nosferatu is my favourite horror movie. The original black and white one, right? Anyway, that's me chatting away. Go and explore, find some soundtracks. Let me know which ones are your favourite ones. Tell me if you agree with any of my information. I hope I've not overly crowded your mind, but again, that's these ones I talked about. Yes, so are the ones that there are other soundtracks, but these ones that I own. Well, some of them, I've got quite a few. I might revisit it with a few more later down, maybe close to Halloween. Maybe we might even just do Halloween, a breakdown thoroughly of each motif from the movie. That might be fun. Anyway, keep rocking, keep rolling, keep safe. Talk to you next week, guys, because next week I believe is my 1-year anniversary, possibly, which means that something very special will happen in that episode. I hope you like that one. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Talk to you soon, guys. Bye.
Hi, I'm Danny Pellegrino from the Everything Iconic podcast. And who doesn't love a classic burger from McDonald's? That's right. McDonald's classic burgers are hotter, juicier, and tastier than ever. The patties are cooked to juicy perfection. I love the cheese perfectly melted on top. I love the Big Mac that has special sauce in every bite. I love the pillowy, soft, golden bun. So in the words of the Hamburglar, which I believe means grab McDonald's best burgers ever before Hamburglar does at a McDonald's near you.